In a sense, the answer that you give to the question, am I just my brain, has very far-reaching implications for what it means to be human, for how we treat each other, and so on. For example, if we are just our brains, then there is a big impact on meaning, because what do we do with our thoughts, our actions, our speech, our ideas? If we are just our brains, then are those coming from us, or are they coming from forces beyond our control inside of our skulls? And if they're coming from forces beyond our control, then why should we read any meaning into them? They're not coming from us, they're coming from our brains. So there's an erosion of meaning that takes place with this view, with a knock-on effect to free will and moral responsibility. If our actions are driven purely by these forces beyond our control, then can we be held morally responsible for our actions? Or are we just doing what our brains tell us? But of course, we know that we live as though we are the bearer of our ideas and our thoughts, that they do mean something, and that our actions are real and we are the bearer of them as well, which is why we reward good behaviour and we punish bad behaviour, precisely because human beings can be held morally responsible. Obviously, neuroscience is complicated, and different disease states mean that some people might have a predisposition towards behaving a certain way. But I think this view would want to say that's not necessarily 100% absolute. There's still a sense of that person could have chosen otherwise, and therefore they can still be held morally responsible. Another implication of the view that you are just your brain pertains to the area of AI and what we believe one day will be possible. Because if we are just our brains, then in theory, human consciousness, the sense of self that we have, the you that is you, the me that is me, is entirely driven by forces in our brain, and therefore could, in theory, be replicated artificially. And so if we are just our brains, could it be that one day there'll be conscious androids walking our streets? Of course, I actually don't believe that that will be the case. I think that one of our bigger challenges will be in distinguishing between the appearance of consciousness in an algorithm or android and authentic consciousness coming from a human being made in the image of God. I think that will be the area of challenge, and also how human beings handle AI and how they steward it and how they still take responsibility where necessary, rather than abdicating responsibility to an algorithm. And so there are big implications for AI in terms of whether or not we're just our brains and what it means to be human. And then finally, there are implications for beginning and end of life. If we are just our brains, then as the brain is still in development, or indeed at the other end of life when it begins to deteriorate, what does that mean for personhood? Does that person gradually fade away to nothingness? But of course, if you are just your brain, then it's hard to argue otherwise. But if there's more to a person than just their brain, then there's a you, there's a me that remains even when our brain degenerates. And actually, that view actually means that there's still hope. That it's still worth being on this planet, even amidst all the different disease states and things that can happen to us and be thrown at us. And that humans are to be treated with dignity, regardless of the condition of their brain.